Wait, is it really time? It's time. Okay, welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Brian Perez here, and we are live on this Wednesday afternoon, the 16th of February. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We've already got some people calling in. That's awesome. We'll get to you as soon as we can. 888-564-6173 is the number. And hello to you guys watching us on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective, as well as on the 1 Minute Apologist YouTube channel. I've got your guy, the 1 Minute Apologist himself, Dr. Bobby Conway here. He's actually on the Bobby Cam. He's in North Carolina, but he's joining us here. And in the studio with me, sitting in for Brian Broderson, what a stand-up guy, Mike Chaddock.
Quite literally.
From Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Mike just wanted to try something new today.
Not in
Did I say?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Image
San
Church
Juan
and
Capistrano.
the original.
Downtown every Sunday. Come join us.
The OG Image Church.
But
the one here.
if you are in Charlotte, visit that guy's church.
That guy's church, yes. I still get him confused after all these years. I don't know why. But so Mike decided to stand up today. He just wants to try something new. I think he has a backache or something. I don't know.
It's the thing to do. You know that?
Dude, check this out, bro. You ready? I could be a stand-up guy, too. I have a desk.
Is it adjustable?
Oh,
there you go.
And it's adjusting.
There you go.
Check that out.
But the camera's not. Okay.
But
can we get the camera or
I'm
no?
going to be a sit-down guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Too much adjusting, but,
Well, you know what? It's so I went back home. A friend of mine from my Christian high school in San Francisco Bay Area tragically passed away about my age, so mid-40s. And, went back up there and we're talking, and it's funny because we're all in our mid-40s. We're having these, conversations about our lower backs and how they hurt all the time. And,
right.
If you get a bad pillow or a bad mattress, you're going to have a bad week and all this kind of funny stuff. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to stand more. And because I'm riding around in the car all the time. And then, as a pastor, a lot of stuff, you're studying, you're sitting down all the time. And yeah, I'm just going to try to give my lower back a little vacation from its problems, or at least I'm going to give it the old college try here.
Well, as long as it works for what we're doing on Facebook and YouTube, we can. I don't see a problem with it. Maybe I'll join you too and stand up. I don't know, but for now, I will sit and take your calls at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. You can also send us your questions on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective using the messenger feature, but that's not the best way to get an answer to your question. We recommend that you call us, have a seat, stand up, however you want to do it. Stand on your head till your ears turn red. 888-564-6173 is the number. So here's a question from Gustavo, who says, I asked you guys a while ago about my wife who is a Catholic and I'm a Christian, how to show her that Jesus is the only way. Okay, now my new question is, what should I do when she does not care to listen to what I have to say and we always end up in an argument? Could religion be a cause of a divorce? Not that I would want that, but I just can't get through to her with this. Even some of her friends that are Christian have tried to invite her to church. Thank you, and God bless you guys. Okay, Mike, you first.
Yeah, well, I think it's, you always want to speak the truth, and you want to speak the truth in love, but I think conversion is not something you're going to be able to bring about in your flesh. You're not going to, I don't think anyone can be talked into the kingdom of God. It has to be something that the Holy Spirit works in the heart of a man or a woman so that they come to faith in Jesus Christ. So God uses, human preaching and not just in the formal sense of the word preaching, but in conversation, in dialogue with others, in marriages and family and friends and all that kind of stuff. So I think, again, God uses that, but again, it's the Holy Spirit. So it sounds like the truth of Jesus has been shared. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, if there's questions or objections, and of course, I think answering those would be good if they specifically state such. But it might be, and I didn't hear the details on this, it might be the case that there's no particular objection. It's just, I don't want to hear it anymore. Mm-hmm. That's it, Yeah. And at that point, you have to live it out. You just have to show that the gospel you're proclaiming has grabbed a hold of your heart. Because I think a lot of times, people want their loved ones or friends or coworkers or whatever to convert, but then they go about it in a way that can contradict the message itself. And so I think it's so important to live out the truth of the gospel, to show the generous love of God, the grace of God, the patience of God, just the way God is patient with us. Many of us didn't come to faith until, maybe, I think we'd all probably say later than we would have liked, some more than others. But, I think just continue to pray, seek the Lord, trust God. Sometimes, you know what? It's nothing we're going to say to people. They have to go through something. There's going to be an experience that they're going to have, whether it's the loss of the loved one, loss of the job, a cancer diagnosis, the country going to hell in a handbasket, whatever it is. It's going to be something that so rattles the foundation of their life, which for them, because they're not a Christian, it's not Jesus, which means their foundation will be shaken at some point. And when that happens, I think the truth of what has been said will come flooding in, and then that's the moment where, again, they will have an opportunity to receive that truth that they've heard for so long.
Now, could different religions be a quote-unquote irreconcilable difference where divorce could be an option? I mean,
I've
is that
seen
kind
it
of extreme?
happen, if that's the question.
But that's not necessarily the best thing. I mean,
as a Christian, Paul addresses this kind of thing in 1 Corinthians. He actually talks about if a believer's married to a non-believer, and his advice is not, and again, non-believer, that's a very broad category, isn't it? I mean, that could be atheist, agnostic, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, secular, irreligionist, could fill in the blank. And Paul's initial wisdom there is not leave the person, but hey, live it out, love them. Your marriage is, ceremonially clean for the sake of the believer, even if that person happens to not be a believer, and your children, again, the blessing of God due to the presence of a believer there. So you're going to try to live winsomely and persuasively, lovingly, acknowledging the truth both in word and in deed to the best of your ability. But it is true that there are instances in which, for those reasons, for the reasons of what one deeply holds in opposition to another, people are going to part ways. And I mean, sadly, it does happen all the time, but I have seen it, work out. But this is why we also advise Christians, don't marry somebody who's not a Christian. And I know when you're single and you're lonely, it's easy to start, going, maybe they'll become a Christian at some point. I'll do the missionary dating thing. And then the person gets baptized and they join a church and they get a new believer's Bible, but they're just doing that to marry you. And then as soon as they marry you, they don't go to church anymore. They threw the new believer's Bible away, which they never read anyway. And then it's a big mess. So, God can work miraculously and graciously, but it's not the kind of situation you want to purposely go into if you have a choice.
And truth be told, Gustavo probably has more in common with his Catholic wife than he would with a secular wife or an atheist wife.
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, again, it depends on what they mean by I'm Catholic. It could just mean my family is. I grew up in it. It's a culture. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
But I would think even within that culture, even though it's a Protestant, there's things we would disagree with, but it is the same God. They believe in the God of the Bible, the Trinitarian God, Father, Son, and Spirit. It gets a little different after that at various points, but it is the same God. We're not saying it's a different God. That would actually be a denial of the Trinitarian God of Protestant evangelical theology. So we do. That is the same God. So there should be something there that is good and true that they could have, as you're pointing out, a common basis. So, yeah.
All right, Gustavo, thank you for sending in your question on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective using the Messenger feature. Let's do one more from Facebook before we go to the phones. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. Meek wants to know if the story of Job is an actual story that really happened, or is it an allegory? Bobby, what do you say?
I personally take it as an actual story. There are those that say it's more like a drama that we see in the Old Testament. Job is the oldest book in the ancient Hebrew scriptures. Nevertheless, The book of Job, I take as a historical story, but you can really see how one could see that. There's a lot of poetry that is in that book. And I think that when you consider what's going on, some would say, oh, this was a dramatic play, like that would be shown in a theater of sorts. And the purpose of it was to show that God allows his people to go through testing, and they will come out and their righteousness will be proved, and God's faithfulness will be shown to be true. And so there are those that look at that book of Job, and those that are doing that aren't necessarily trying to be, weak in their scriptural interpretation. They're trying to be faithful to the way the genre works, and they're looking at it going, I wonder if this is that. Kind of like the book Song of Solomon. You see a lot going on there, and we don't really talk to each other in that kind of language. And when you read it, it's kind of like, is this a drama? Is this kind of a play, a skit of sorts to show a love relationship and what that looks like? For me, I'm quite comfortable taking Job as a historical story, and that's how I do it. But I would say there are those that take it in the other fashion, to our questioners' curiosity.
Any thoughts, Mike?
I'm totally with Bobby on that.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's not an either or, it's a both and. I think people point out that it looks highly stylized and poetic and dramatic, and therefore they conclude it's not a history. It's like, well, that's not true. It can be a historical event, but it's presented, the way it's presented is done in a poetic, dramatic fashion.
Kind of like a lot of the movies we see that are based on a true story, and it turns out, Brad Pitt says these words. The original person may not have said those words, but,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a lot of false dichotomies out there. It's either this or that. Many times it's a both and I think so in this case.
Bobby, did you want to add something?
Yeah, well, what Mike said, that is the other option, right? It's kind of like, is this one, the real story of Job, or two, is it just, this theatrical dramatic play, or three, is it really about Job, but it's presented in a way that looks poetic? It is poetic. I mean, we can't get around that. It's poetry. Yeah. But is there some level of allegory there? And that's tough. We just get so far removed from the text. And for me, it just helps to know these are some options that faithful interpreters have tried to look at. But I do think Job was a historical person.
All right. Meek, thank you for sending in your question on facebook.com/pastorsperspective. Going to do one more from Facebook because it ties in kind of with one of the questions we have here on the board. Kathy and Paul want to know if we need to volunteer at church, things like kids ministry, parking lot ministry, ushering, to demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit. And Tabu in California has a similar question. Hi, Tabu.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm a longtime caller. Thanks to you guys, I was able to go get baptized over at Calvary, at the Calvary Costa Mesa about a month ago. So thank you guys very much.
Awesome.
Cool.
Congratulations.
That's great.
Yeah, I believe Pastor Broderson, the older one, baptized me. I had a moment I was able to pray with him, and it was one of the greatest moments in my life. Thank you very much for that.
Pastor Broderson, the older one.
That's what I call him.
Yeah.
Every time I
don't
see
think
him.
these guys are going to live that down or have him
That's
live
great.
that down.
Yeah, we're going to roast him on that.
Yeah. So, Tabu, what do you want to know?
So my question is, I was reading the story of Jesus where he's passing by the tree and he wants to eat the fruit. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he wanted to get fruit from the tree, but the tree didn't bear any good fruit. So the next day they came by, he cursed the tree. So my question is, me being a new believer, walking in the faith, believing in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, what is the core essence of going about and bearing good fruit? So when I do see him one day, he's proud of me for going about doing things the right way, the way that the Father and the Son intended me to do, and bearing good fruits.
Right. And yeah, does volunteering at church have anything to do with it? Like Kathy and Paul asked on their question. Mike, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we're not saved for nothing. That seems to be what some people believe out there, that salvation is merely about getting out of hell. It's just fire insurance or something like that. But the great news is, while it is completely true that salvation is rescuing us from the wrath to come, it is rescuing us from hell, yet it's more than that. And I'm so happy to say that. It's more than that. You are saved to good works. That's what Ephesians 2 tells us. For by grace you've been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it's the gift of God, not of works, so that no one can boast. For you are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, that you should walk in them. So again, I just think in the American church today, there's a pervasive belief that only certain people do ministry. But I believe that's unbiblical. Everyone does the work of the ministry. As a matter of fact, my job description, Bobby's job description in Ephesians 4 is the pastor's job is to equip the saints so they can do the work of the ministry.
Yes.
That, ironically, it's not so we can do all the ministry and everybody else just takes a holiday or something. It's like, no, our job is to equip the saints so they can do the work of the ministry. And this is supported by the fact that the Holy Spirit gives gifts to everybody. And the gifts are not for people to hoard to themselves, to hang on, to isolate, to be alone. God has given you gifts, and you are to bring them to the body in order to strengthen it. So when people are not involved in church, and again, I'm not nitpicky over details. Like, honestly, I don't even, part of me is like, I don't really care what you're doing. Like, just be involved. It's like I tell my kids at home, it's like, sure, I could pick up your lunch tray, your stuff for you, but I just want you involved in the family. I want you learning, hey, other people are loving you and they're supporting you, and your job is to, A, learn to support yourself, and then B, give back, like be a part of the community. And the church is a family.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual family. It is the household of God. And so people who are in churches and they're not serving or giving or contributing in any way, they're being dysfunctional spiritually. Because going back to what I said, you're not saved for nothing. You're not saved to just do what you want to do. You're saved to do what Jesus wants you to do. And what Jesus wants you to do is serve the local church. So there's my spiel.
I like it. So it's the pastor's job to equip the saints so that then the pastors can go on holiday.
Eventually, once every 7 years.
Bobby, any thoughts from you?
Well, as far as the way that we bear fruit, Jesus said in John 15:5, if you abide in me, right, and my words abide in you, you will bear much fruit. So what we see as it relates to bearing fruit is there is a relational feature. And our caller Taboo wants to know, how is it that we do bear fruit? And we bear fruit by being relationally connected to Jesus. And so much of Christian sanctification today that is on offer through churches is left brain discipleship processes. And by that, a left brain discipleship process would be something that would say something like, if I just teach people the truth, and then they will obey it. So hearing the truth equals obedience and then action. But that's not always the case. There's a relational feature. Jesus said in John 14:15, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. So there is this relational aspect in John 15:5, this abiding. And I think that one of the things that we have to do a better job in the local church is teaching the importance of relational discipleship, that we don't just grow by learning theological truths. You can learn theological truths and your heart can be literally unaffected and it could be dried up toward God. And so it's very important that we abide in Jesus, that we enjoy Jesus. There's a book that I'm going through right now, and I'll share it with our callers. It's called The Other Half of Church. And it's by Jim Wilder and Michelle Hendricks or Michael Hendricks. I don't know if it's a girl or guy because it's Michel. But it's Christian Community, Brain Science, and Overcoming Spiritual Stagnation. What is the other half of church? Well, so much of church is often focused on left brain, is what Jim Wilder is saying. Like just hey, if you just know the right information, that will lead to sanctification. The right side of the brain is your creative, your relational side, and it's basically talking about a whole-brained discipleship process that engages the left and the right side of the brain. Now, I think there are churches that are also very right brain oriented. They're very relational, but then they they throw out doctrine. So it's not either or on this either. It's whole brained, right? So we need to make sure that we instruct people how to think properly, because Christianity's always been a creedal faith. But then we want to help them to understand the way that the creeds are lived out is in the context of relationship. And this is something that is so important. And I love this book so far. I think it could be a great discipleship book for small groups and for churches that are interested in helping people in a practical way learn some neuroscience. Jim Wilder describes himself as a neurotheologian. And so he's big on neuroscience, and he's a theologian, and he does a great job of showing how some of these outworkings of the spiritual life, like attachment. You think about the word attachment, hesed, in the Hebrew language. This God's love. It's kind of like the agape love of the New Testament. It's this covenant love in the Old Testament, but it's an attachment love. Like nothing will separate us from the love of God. And we're going to struggle to grow if we're in an insecure relationship with God, thinking that He is going to write us off because we didn't produce enough works for the day. I think that we have to understand grace and the gospel, and there's so much more I could share, but those are just some initial thoughts.
But you're not done with the book yet, and then you'll have more to share once you're done reading the book.
I got an hour left on Audible, yeah. We'll be done tonight.
It's called The Other Half of Church, Christian Community, Brain Science, and Overcoming Spiritual Stagnation. The authors are Jim Wilder and, yeah, you're right, it's either Michael or Michelle or Hendricks is the last name, but you can look that up. Any other thoughts from you, Mike?
No, I think like Bobby's saying, I can use the metaphor of a gym. People know, okay, I should get in shape. That's like, I know I should follow Jesus. Then, well, I need to have a plan. I need to know what I'm doing. Well, that's your workout plan. But then if you don't go work out, you actually have to do it. And James 1 says, don't be hearers of the word only, but doers. And that's why I'm not trying to present, because I know even what I'm saying, somebody could misconstrue that as a legalistic, I got to serve in the church or Jesus doesn't love me. I didn't say that. I'm assuming, hopefully, the gospel of grace. Again, Ephesians 2:8-9. Notice that grace came literally right before verse 10, where you're saved unto good works. But think about it this way. Good works and serving in the church, that is where you're going to see the kinds of fruit, even if we're talking about fruit of character, like love, joy, peace, patience. Well, what does that look like if you have no relationship with anybody, right? Like you're going to develop patience not by yourself in a cave somewhere.
Right.
You will develop it, believe me, by serving in your local church.
Yeah.
By serving people and serving kids in the children's ministry. You're going to have to learn to be patient with kids that maybe they don't want to learn. They want to play around and draw pictures on the table they shouldn't be drawing, or whatever it is. And you have to develop patience. Or, people, you serve in the parking lot ministry and people don't say hi or they don't thank you or whatever. And you're like, this is where you're developing character. So I want to make sure people understand you're not doing good works in order to be saved. The only good work by which anyone is saved is the good work of Jesus Christ upon the cross. But having been saved by that, evidence of that is serving in the church, and good works are a gift to you and I, because we get to become who we are in Jesus, who didn't come to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many. So that's what you and we were all sent out as servants of the Lord Jesus Christ, and it's for our good, for our benefit.
We get to. We don't have to.
Yeah. We get to do our Father's work. It's exciting.
Yeah. Bobby?
Yeah, I do think that we can, explore our heart, like asking ourselves questions like, well, why is it that maybe I don't want to serve in a particular area? Now, I get it. There's this sense where we want to use our gifts and we want to serve in areas that we're passionate about. But then there's these moments where we have this familial responsibility to one another inside the church. And we all have to do things at times we don't like to do. And so much of like the leadership organizational books. It's all about finding your passion spots. And I'm totally for that. Like, I think 90% of the time we want to be serving out of our passion area, right? Like, you don't want to serve out of an area you're not passionate about 90% of the time, and only in the area you're passionate about 10% of the time. But we can read so much leadership and organizational books that are out there about, finding your passion and all that we'll actually think that, you know what, God would never want me to do anything that I'm not passionate about.
Right.
And I would say that's just not true.
That's false.
God wants us to deny ourselves. We need to lay down our life, and we need to realize part of sanctification is always learning to do things we might not want to do. And so I think that's part of the thing. Like, let's come to our church and let's help you to find what you're excited about and what you want to do. And a lot of it is, you have pastors that have a diet of reading a bunch of business leadership books, and then they go and they do that discipleship process. And what they do is they teach their congregations to basically, well, I'm not going to serve. I'm not passionate about doing children's ministries. I'm not going to serve. I don't like set up and tear down. And basically what's happened is these pastors have been bred on leadership books, not on the Bible. And unfortunately, we don't help our people to grow if they don't know what it means to die to themselves. Again, we should help our flocks to understand their spiritual gifts, what they're passionate about, what their abilities are. That's so important. And 90% of the time, that's where they should be living, because they'll burn out. But they should never get to a spot where they feel entitled that they don't have to serve in other spots, because we have a familial responsibility to one another.
Yep.
Spot on. I'm 100% in agreement with Bobby.
Good conversation, guys. It'll be archived later on today on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube if you want to listen to it again, take notes, write stuff down, and order that book that Bobby was talking about called The Other Half of Church. Taboo, thank you for calling in with your question. I hope that answers it. I think we got Taboo's question answered, but then we started talking about other stuff as well, but it was all good. So good stuff. 888-564-6173 is the number to call today on Pastor's Perspective. I'm Brian Perez, answering your questions today. Bobby Conway from Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Mike Chaddick from Image Church here in Orange County. He's sitting in for the older Broderson today on the program. So give us a call, 888-564-6173. I got it.
You
right.
got the county right.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, is it going to do it again? No, we're not in Charlotte. We're in San Juan.
I hope not. All right, let's go to Alabama. Here's Douglas with a Super Bowl question. Super Bowl question. Yes, Douglas, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to be this Grinch who stole Christmas.
Oh, no. Don't do it, Douglas. Actually, yes, do it.
The halftime show is filthy, disgusting, perverted, and you have people showing the signs of the devil.
Oh.
How do Christians say that it's okay to watch the football game?
Well, I think that's just it. It's okay to watch the football game, but, Mike, what do you say? Did you watch the game? Did you watch the halftime show?
I think the halftime shows have been bad for years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think they've been. I mean, I kind of know that the kids, they can watch football. I don't mind if my kids watch football, although there are Christians that think you shouldn't watch sports, that sports are bad or a waste of time. So that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I think obviously you'd have to ask these individual Christians, I think some could watch it approvingly. Those would be very interesting conversations to have. Wow, really? You thought that was wonderful? Interesting. Why did you think that? And then there's others where they might tolerate it, right? Like they don't like it, they're grieved by it, but they wanted to know what it is. What are they doing? There was a lot of buzz about it, and there's going to be millions and millions of people also watching it. So maybe they watch it because I'll be able to have a conversation with somebody. And to be honest with you, I think it's not something I can answer on behalf of a bunch of different people where there's all kinds of different reasons why. But I'm supposing, Douglas, maybe what you're and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe what you're thinking is, how could anyone who calls himself a Christian watch that and like enjoy it and be like, oh, this is good. And again, that to me would probably be a carnal Christian if they're a Christian, and I'd certainly want to know what, that they didn't notice anything
right.
that was bad. Like, really? You really didn't think any of that? Oh, okay. So yeah, those are just interpersonal conversations. I think Douglas, myself, Bobby, we could all have with one another. And I think that's a great thing for us to do.
All right, we'll see if Bobby wants to chime in. But right now, we've got to take a break here on the Pastor's Perspective program because there's that pesky music again. We like the music at 3 o'clock because it means the program is ending. But then the break comes and then the end of the program comes. We don't like to hear the music then. But that's okay. We'll get through it. We're here till 4 p.m. Pacific time today, and we'd love to hear from you. The number there on the bottom of your screen if you're watching on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective or on the 1 Minute Apologist YouTube channel, 888-564-6173. If you're listening on the radio, you can call us too till 4 p.m. Pacific time on this Wednesday, Wednesday the 16th, 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. We are back on Pastor's Perspective. Brian Perez here, along with Bobby Conway and Mike Chaddick. Bobby is the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. I remembered. And he's also the author and apologist that you see on the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. In the studio with me is Mike Stand. No, it's Mike Standing. Mike Chaddick is standing in front of a microphone.
Standing for Jesus,
Standing
Brian.
for Jesus, of course.
Jesus.
So does that mean I'm sitting for Jesus? Well, at least I'm doing something.
Well, you know what? Someone had to do it.
That's right. Weren't we just talking about servanthood and everything?
Yes,
Mike is
whatever
standing.
you do.
I'm just sitting being the lazy guy. No, I'm kidding. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. And all right, back to the phones here. Oh, wait, no. We were talking about the Super Bowl and the halftime show. And Bobby, did you want to chime in on anything there?
And Bobby loved it, so I'm really curious to hear what he says.
Bobby was singing along with all the songs. And
I was in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, and they actually put together this incredible Super Bowl party. It was amazing how over the top they went at the hotel to kind of create a football cake, and they streamed it in. And so I got a chance to watch the football game myself and saw the halftime show. I'm one of those guys that I would say, for me personally, in order to be really consistent, like if I'm going to pick on maybe the halftime show and say a Christian shouldn't watch that, then I'm going to really need to be prepared to say what else I shouldn't do in life, as far as what I shouldn't listen to music-wise, what I shouldn't watch on Netflix or TV or commercials, what I shouldn't do entertainment-wise. And I often wouldn't be surprised if I started doing a little vetting with people, how quickly it might be that the Super Bowl gets picked on, but maybe somebody has an appetite for watching horror films, or maybe they have an appetite for watching rom-coms that are just, completely absurd and wrong. And so what I have found in this whole entertainment arena is that amongst us as Christians, it's interesting how much our convictions vary given that we have the same Holy Spirit living within us. And so I conclude that maybe just a bunch of us are completely anesthetized to what God's up to, and maybe we're just so carnal we don't even know what's going on. And that's a possibility, I think, for some. I think for others, that some are bothered more by some things than others. So I can watch certain action films that my wife can't, or I should say, like a war film, like a Saving Private Ryan. Well, some of these bomb scenes would really disturb somebody like my wife. Mm-hmm. But I don't know why it is. I can watch it. Like maybe I should be like more bothered, like to the point. But I'll tell you this, if I was to turn on a certain program like watching The Bachelor or something like that, then that gets into a problem area for me where I have to be extra guarded. But my wife, she could watch a bunch of beautiful women and it wouldn't bug her in the least. That's just not going to be her stumbling block. So all that to say, when it comes to things like entertainment, I think the reason we're taken back sometimes is because Christians have different convictions about this. Number one, some are just flat out carnal and need to repent. Others just aren't bothered by some things that others are bothered by. And then I think for me, my approach is, like, for example, why is it like some Christians would say you can't watch a halftime show on this, but they're totally comfortable reading certain books that would be salacious, or they would have lots of inappropriate things in the book. So why is it okay to read something but not watch it? Why is it okay to listen to something but not read it? And so I think for me, I'm one of these guys, I can start picking off some of these inconsistencies really quick. And what I think in my own heart and life is, as I watch something like the halftime show, I have to make sure I never turn off my Christian discerner. What the Christian worldview teaches me to do is to bring my worldview to bear on everything, whether I'm watching a movie, whether I'm watching a halftime show, whether I'm listening to music, and whether I'm reading a book. And when I'm doing stuff, what I find myself saying is I'm always measuring it in a biblical way. This is out of line with our biblical worldview. This is tainted in this way. This is not tainted in this way. Some things I could watch, like I could watch a halftime Super Bowl show and I didn't feel like it was a big stumbling fest for me. And so I could look at it and I could say, man, there is a lot of carnality to this. And you could just see how debauched our culture is, that they value this stuff so much. And boy, you could just see some of the political stances that people are taking and the posturing. And then I can just listen to the buzz and the feedback and think, man, it's interesting how we celebrate this as a culture. And now I've watched it, I'm informed. I haven't compromised in the sense that I'm buying into it and I'm saying this is okay, but I'm able to offer a biblical interpretation of where this was just off and what's wrong with it. There are other things that if I was watching, it would really potentially cause me to stumble. And that's when I have to know I can't even partake watching it. So some people, maybe they had an addiction to the rap in the past and they just don't feel like they can even watch it without stumbling. Well, that's fine. That's them. That's their story. For me, I wasn't like going, oh my goodness, I need to start downloading Snoop Dogg. That's not what my temptation was. I wasn't feeling that urge.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
Yeah, no, I think, Bobby said a lot of great things there. And, that's why I think we just, as Christians, generally want to be careful about passing off our own convictions, our own limitations, our own struggles, whatever those might be, onto everybody else. And again, we might truly not get how somebody could do, this, that, or the other. But again, that person might be in a different position. We don't know what's their motive. What are they doing? How does it impact them? I mean, that is a big question just right there. What is the impact of seeing this? Does this lead you away from Christ? Does it lead you to Christ? Maybe your heart was breaking over it and they're sitting there praying for these people that are lost in this gross sensuality and lifestyle, which, or whatever it might be. So again, I think we can still say with conviction, I personally wouldn't want to do this, or I don't see how, and because I love this brother or sister, I would certainly just want to say, hey, I just want to make sure, you're walking with the Lord and this isn't stumbling you. And here's, I hope this is wisdom. It kind of comes from my own conviction and experience, but here you go. And just, be careful because again, like Bobby said, I think it can be very, very different from person to person as far as anyway, how something affects you, whether it leads you towards sin or whether it's something, to be honest, maybe it does the opposite. You're actually repulsed by that and you're like, no, I don't want to go do that or be involved with that at all. So
Bobby Conway, our social media gal, says don't be dissing the Hallmark Channel. So keep that in mind when you before you put anything down. No, I'm kidding. What else did you want to add, Bobby?
Well, I think a couple things, like just for a few examples. R.C. Sproul, the late, great R.C. Sproul, a Christian apologist, theologian, he would go on record talking about how he just loved horror films. And I found myself thinking, how do you say that? Like, it just was weird. It was bizarre to me. I'm like, there's, I love thrillers, suspense thrillers. There's a fine line, though, of suspense thriller and then going into just horror, where you're just, and I can find myself going, I don't get that. Like, how is this that R.C. Sproul could say that? But for some reason, it didn't affect him the way it would affect me. He just said, oh, he loved the feeling of just like being scared, like, and having the hair on his arm stand up. It just was exciting to him. And I think, oh my goodness, but I know that there's some suspense thrillers that I can watch that my wife would be like, I'm not watching that. And so it is funny how this gets like this. I can remember James Dobson with Focus on the Family. He went for a season where he watched a bunch of pornography as a study. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he did a study. Now, I don't think, and he did it like he subjected himself to see what people were going through as a psychologist, right? And then he obviously said it was abominable, and it was just it was a gas to him, and he couldn't believe it. But I thought, you are playing with fire. Like, how do you do an experiment of like watching pornography? But he ended up doing that, and I'm not saying it was right, believe me. I'm just saying he would end up producing reports out of this and talking about this. And so there are different people that expose themselves to different things. On the one hand, you have Dobson. It wasn't entertainment for him. I think it was just more of a clinical and look at some. Sproul, it was entertainment. And so I find myself going, wow, we are a bizarre bunch. Like the things like, one person can enjoy a scotch every night, and another person would think, well, is this person even a Christian? Mm-hmm. I just think it gets crazy sometimes. And it would be a lot easier if there was no such thing as entertainment and media and movies. And, I think, wouldn't it have been a little bit easier? But then they've always had their ways of entertaining each other.
Yep. True that. Now, what about paranormal videos? Elena wants to know about that. Hey, Elena,
Mike
welcome.
Likes those a lot.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call, pastors.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for calling in.
I think your discussion fits, or our discussion that we're having here fits right in with your question.
Exactly. I was just going to say that right now, too.
So you want to know if it's okay to watch paranormal videos. So exactly what do you mean by that for the uninformed?
Basically, on YouTube, there's paranormal videos. There's people that do explorations at the cemeteries and or haunted places, let's just say. And they go and they take their camera and they're showing it live on YouTube. And you as a viewer can see this. And they actually see, you can hear noises. They actually sometimes do perform satanic rituals to evoke the, the spirits and stuff like that. So my question is, yes, is it a sin to watch these type of paranormal videos?
Now, do you enjoy watching these, Elena, or what's your feeling after you watch one?
Okay, so for example, I do love scary movies. I've always had since I was a kid.
So you have something in common with R.C. Sproul.
Yeah, exactly. So I do. I really enjoy scary movies. And so when I came across these videos, it's very entertainment to me. It's entertaining. Mm-hmm. So, but I do. After I see these videos, I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe, like this is happening. Or, I use it as an entertainment. It's basically entertainment.
Yeah. Mike, what would you tell Elena?
Yeah, I mean, this definitely flows from what much of what we've said already. And, I would just say, for one thing, like the Apostle Paul says in Romans 14:23, whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. So I think for any individual believer, if you can't do what you're doing with a good conscience, like if you're sitting there freaked out, you might be sinning, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Right. So I think that's important. So, and again, this is not to say you couldn't watch a scary video, although, again, depends on, some of them are just, I've seen scary movies, and I know some people probably wouldn't watch it, but, it was not maybe that like graphic or intense or whatever. And then there's some that are just like really trying to be as realistic and overtly demonic as possible. And it's just crazy. And I don't know how, like, it could stain your mind and stay with you all week and keep you, and just kind of have power over your life. So I think, again, where you're going to come at it, it has to be theological. And this is why studying the Bible and Christian doctrine is so important. We should be interpreting everything in the world, including movies and entertainment and sports, through a theological worldview. We should be looking at that. And I think one of the problems with watching kind of the typical, horror or paranormal, let's say movies, for example, a lot of people, including Christians, after they watch it, because in these movies, there's usually like no God. God's not there. There's no God. Or if there's a God, it's, it's like reducible to maybe like a good witch, or, there's this kind of, or it's a formula, it's a magical formula. And if you say the right thing and get it. And
or sometimes it's a Catholic priest or something whose theology is all.
Yeah, and you don't get into that. But here's, even if it's, let's say, a Catholic priest and they've got the cross and Christ on there, but they make the power of God reducible to something other than the God of the Bible. Mm-hmm. And that's communicating bad theology. God is not a pawn in Satan's scheme. God is not the God of Greek mythology or whatever, where he's got some power, maybe more than humans, but it's a yin and yang thing, kind of 50-50. Oh my gosh, part of the fun of a horror movie is you don't know, is the bad guy going to win? Is the demon going to win? Oh my gosh, how are we going to send this Hellraiser back to hell, or whatever it is? But the God of the Bible is absolutely sovereign. And there's not one moment of any day in which God is not sovereign over all the forces of darkness. And so if you as a Christian, or we, any of us as Christians, watch a movie and we come away believing something that's false, that goes against the Bible, that's a problem. And that will inform your behavior. It causes people to be freaked out when there is maybe, actual demonic activity in somebody's life, or maybe they're so freaked out, because I've seen this. People who are so terrified of demons, they can't enjoy their relationship with Jesus. And they do not give Jesus the credit as being the Lord of all, Pantocrator. He has all power over all the forces of darkness. And so, again, watch the effect that whatever you're viewing or watching has on your understanding of biblical truth. Mm-hmm. I think that's a vital test. But again, there probably are many more. I don't know, Bobby, if you have anything to add to this, to paranormal movies. We know you like the thrillers.
Well, again, isn't it funny, Mike? I mean, I like suspense thriller, but for some reason I don't like messing with the paranormal stuff, right? I feel like I'm opening myself up to something, right? Like if it's demonic. Now, here's a way that I could see how somebody could watch it, but in an apologetic sense. Let's say somebody is really interested in the occult, and they are interested in reaching people who are part of witchcraft and the occult, or, the Church of Satan. And in order to reach them, they spend some time studying some of the materials. They become familiar in an academic sense on some of these videos, and they become aware of some of the paranormal stuff, where it's not for entertainment, but it's for reaching these people for Christ, to understand what's going on. I wouldn't want that calling on my life. I had such a crazy season of spiritual warfare when I was younger. I mean, I don't want to open myself up to any of that stuff. So here's me saying, like, here, my own conscience comes into place. Like, you go stick something like Amityville Horror on, and some of these programs that are out there, that you hear about, and I'm not even remembering the names of some of them, but I'm going, I would not be comfortable watching some of these things. But others, if they are looking at it, I think if it's to reach people, then maybe. If it's just to be entertained by the thought of what Satan or Lucifer or demons could do, that's nothing we really want to mess with, because we're actually touching into something that has a reality to it, right? The unseen realm. I think the final thought I would say is, obviously, do whatever you do unto the glory of the Lord, 1 Corinthians 10:31. I think there's some questions, like, does it reduce my passion for Christ? Do I check my discerner out at the door? So like, when I'm entertained, do I always keep my discernment on? Am I being aware if it's dampering my passion for Christ? These are important questions that we need to ask. I think for me, I listen to Christians sometimes, and I think that, I just want to be able to connect with the culture. And I'm like, listening to them say this, and I realize, man, well, you say you want to connect with the culture, but really are you sure you don't just want to watch movies and listen to all the music of the culture? Because how many non-Christian friends do you really have that you're trying to reach? And how often do you read the Bible? And how often do you really dig into theology? And I think for somebody like Mike or myself, you know, while I might listen to some music and stuff, and I might watch movies, I am keeping my discerner on, and I know that I have a heavy-duty diet of reading philosophy and apologetics and theology and the Bible, and then bringing all that to bear when I'm being entertained. There's nothing wrong with entertainment, but we have to make sure we keep our discernment on, like, are now we being entertained in a way that is ungodly and unbiblical, and it's crossed the line, and Lord help us to know how to discern there.
Sometimes that happens when you're watching, you know, a documentary series or something, and you read what it's about, and you go, you know what, I think I'll watch this. And then as you start watching it, an episode in or something, you're like, I don't think I want to finish watching this. Because again, like Bobby said, keep your discerner on. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point, because I think like these conversations about horror movies, paranormal, thrill. How about documentaries about the Bible that the History Channel does? You know, I've actually seen people like that jack up their walk with God, because typically the History Channel doesn't interview evangelicals. You know, they might throw a token one in here and there and stuff like that, but typically they'll interview you know, whatever you want to call them, liberal theologian, whatever, somebody who doesn't believe in the God of the Bible. And so they will, you know, use their position and prestige being from a certain institution, and then they'll say, oh, this didn't happen, this isn't real, you can't trust the Bible and all that. See, I can actually watch those things, and it doesn't bother me it doesn't bother me other than I grieve for these people and anyone being led astray. But as a pastor, I actually think it's my calling to watch stuff like that. You know, I've purposely gone to seminaries where, and again, I've been to 5 or 6 of them, but, you know, I've actually gone to ones where purposely I knew I did not agree with where they were coming from.
Wow.
Because I wanted to wrestle with them. I wanted to contend for the faith, and I wanted to hear from their own mouth what they actually believe. Because conservatives would often say, oh, liberals believe this, 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 and this. And then but I'm hearing it from them, and they're kind of digesting it. And so I'm like, I actually want to hear it the way they would say it if they were saying it for themselves, stating their own case. Show me your best arguments. How did you arrive at this position? What does it look like if you accept these presuppositions? What are the end results in daily life? And to actually contend, but I would not recommend a lot of people go to some of those. Like, really, I wouldn't, you know, because I saw people when I was there losing their faith. I literally had a grown man, he's in his 30s, United Methodist, UMC, United Methodist minister, and he was there at seminary to just become a better youth pastor. And we left Old Testament class, and this man was crying. He was actually weeping. I said, why are you crying? And he said, because that man just dismantled everything I believe and said, none of it's real, none of it's this and that. And now I don't even, you know, I can't tell this to the kids, and I don't even know about my job anymore. And that's when I was able to say, hey, that's just this guy's opinion. And there is a ton of amazing evangelical scholarship that literally answers every single thing that guy said, and I think does it in a much more intelligible and convincing manner. But I wouldn't have known that had I not been willing to engage with these things. And I know Bobby is, you know, a part of being an apologist. You're doing that all the time, right? But I know we wouldn't say everyone should read the Book of Mormon. Mm-hmm. Everyone shouldn't go to a liberal Protestant mainline seminary and all this kind of stuff. But I do believe some are called to do that. But I would say, honestly, if it was having a negative impact on my faith, I wouldn't do it either. But ironically for me, because I believe I'm called to engage with that, it actually makes my faith stronger. It does the opposite for me.
Isn't there a verse that talks about that? I'm trying to remember. What is it?
Jude, to earnestly contend for the faith. That was once.
No. There's
which one?
Goodness.
Become all things to all people.
No. There isn't.
Let's just let him say it. We're going to be reading the whole Bible here.
I can't remember. If I remember
it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten.
Well, of course,
Son.
that's the one. That's the one. No, the one about not everyone should. Oh goodness. Anyway, I don't remember.
Thanks for sharing, Brian.
Yeah. You know, I'm here all week. Sadly. What did you want to add, though, Bobby?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I would want to say is there are certain seasons in our life where we can't handle something, where maybe in a later season we can. And that's an interesting part of sanctification that I wish somebody would have told me. Because like early on as a Christian, I was making these commitments. I'll never watch anything above PG. And so I went several years and didn't watch anything. And I remember walking out of a movie because they used the word but not the word but. So I'm out of here, right? And then I go to Dallas Seminary, and my professor, he makes us watch some rated R movies while I'm sitting in class, and he was showing clips from The Matrix, and he was showing how we can learn how to interpret the worldview of our culture through film. And so I started learning to think Christianly about things, and it was actually really helpful. And then I started saying, okay, I'll be open to watching some different movies. All that to say, there are seasons in our life that we are stronger and weaker. And so, for example, an alcoholic that's just getting clean might not be able to be around alcohol at all. But then years down the road, he might comfortably go into a bar and hang out with a friend that he's reaching for Christ and play some pool. So all that to say is, I don't want our audience to think as I'm sharing this that, hey, you might not need to read the Book of Mormon right now. Mike's right. Like, we wouldn't say, go do this. But if you move to Utah and you're in an area that's primarily Mormon, well, then God might say, now's a good time to read that so you could be aware of how to reach them for Christ.
Is that really the music? I told you, I do not like this song at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What a great conversation.
I feel like we were just getting warmed up.
We were just getting started.
Bobby was going to say, if
That's right,
Keith's
man.
getting sanctified, he'll be able to enjoy The Bachelor soon. And, we were going to get to that. But we'll just, another time then. Another time then.
Yes, that's right. You can go see Saw.
Oh, man. No.
Gosh.
I still remember the last slasher flick that I watched, and I was in that theater, and I said, never again.
I mean,
This is
honestly,
just-
it's definitely not my thing.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for calling. Sorry that we couldn't get to all the calls. We'll be back tomorrow for 2 hours. Talk to you then. For Bobby Conway and Mike Chaddock, I'm Brian Perez. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.